Haven's POV.
I floated through a sea of stars, almost weightless, as I descended to the ground below. The fabric of my dress swirled around me as I floated through the sky, my hand reaching out to touch the stars. I descended in solitude, but in my heart I could feel Wesley's presence, telling me he was nearby, that I wasn't truly alone. The grass beneath my feet as I landed was softer than any grass I'd ever felt, and greener than any I had ever seen. I spun in place, looking at the surrounding scenery. In front of where I landed was a dense forest, filled with every type of tree and plant imaginable. The colors were vibrant and true, and the air was clean and clear. Behind me was an exact copy of the temple we'd been in on the island, only bigger and covered with even more jasmine. Through the pillars and floating fabrics of the building, I could just make out a silvery pool on the other side of the temple, shimmering under the light of the stars. My feet carried me forward to the temple, unable to deny the tug on my soul leading me there. I brushed the fabric out of my way and froze in place, the curtain falling behind me as I stared at the pillars of the temple. Paintings of 2 individual girls filled the temple, a portrait of one girl on each pillar, each image depicting a slightly older version of each girl all the way to adulthood. 21 paintings circling from my left, all of a girl with dark black hair, and 21 paintings circling my right, all of a girl with wild red curls, blue eyes, and freckles just across the bridge of her nose. Me. I followed the images on my right, watching myself grow up in the paintings that were more realistic than actual photographs. Each one depicted an important moment in my life, and I relived them all as the painted me grew older. My first dance recital, the year I danced Clara in the Nutcracker, the day I was offered my apprenticeship, all of them commemorated in these paintings in the temple. The last one was me, the now me, in front of a moon, in silvery clothing. A crown of golden flowers and leaves adorned my curls, and flowers were strewn throughout the strands that blew in the wind. An otherworldly glow emanated from my skin. I reached out to touch it, to feel the paint beneath my fingertips and see if I could sense the magic within the image. Haven? Wes's voice called out as I touched the painting in front of me. I'm in here, I murmured, my voice catching. It didn't matter, though. With his hearing and his sense of smell, he could find me easily. He would always find me. His heavy footsteps sounded from behind me, dampened by the grass at first, and then louder as they touched the marble floor of the temple. Then his footsteps stopped, and I turned around to find him frozen in place, just as I had been when I had first entered the temple. He, too, was dressed in the pants he'd worn before we did the ritual. And in this place, in this magical realm on the moon, he somehow appeared stronger, more handsome than when we were on Earth. It was as if being here augmented his already enhanced looks and strength. His eyes bounced around, taking everything in, examining the paintings. His gaze circled the temple, following the timeline of the little red-headed girl. As if moving on their own, his feet carried him through the temple, and he stopped right behind me, staring up at the newest portrait of me. It's you, he murmured, reaching to touch the painting just as I had done. He looked down at me as I nodded, a question in his eyes, but I couldn't answer it. My thoughts and feelings were jumbled like a spilled bag of Scrabble tiles. I couldn't sort through it all fast enough. His arms wrapped around me from behind, cradling me gently against his chest. His touch said more than any words could, showed me he understood the conflicting thoughts in my head. He just held me, just stood with me as we stared at the painting, his chin resting on my head and his warmth and nearness providing more stability than ever. It's me, I said simply, closing my eyes and leaning my head more into him. I add a new pillar and a new image every year on your birthday. After this year, yours will outnumber your sister's. Both of us turned our heads to the left, where we found an ethereal woman walking towards us. Her silvery hair flowed down her back almost to her ankles, and she wore swaths of white fabric wrapped around her body. Her features were severe yet beautiful, as one might expect from a god or goddess. Not unkind, not malicious, but sharp and keen. Wesley stood up straighter behind me, his body stiffening and his muscles tensing, on alert in the presence of the goddess who had blessed his people. My blood sang, and my cells vibrated and pulsed in her presence, as if every part of me reached out for her, begged for me to connect with her and know her. But I didn't move. I stayed where I was, staring at her as she stopped in front of the pillar of the dark-haired girl. Your sister, Asteria, was only 21 when she died, she told us, looking towards the painting. And that is why my warriors find their mates when they are 21 years of age, she continued, turning back to us. So I am your daughter? I asked, still frozen in place in the safe circle of my mate's arms. A sad, wistful smile graced her face. Yes. You are. Stories are told of adopted children meeting their birth families for the first time. The tears and happiness and love they experience during their reunions are beautiful and fill children with hope. But I had never had dreams of meeting the woman or people who had abandoned me with nothing but a blanket. Nothing but a name. I had no want or desire or need to know the woman in front of me to forge some sort of relationship with her. I was only here for answers my mate and I needed to move forward with our lives. We stared at each other, and silence filled the temple as we waited for someone to speak. Wesley tightened his hold on me, pushing strength and confidence to me through our bond. Giving me just enough to push me to ask what I needed to know more than anything else. Why did you give me up? I asked, my voice shaking more than I wanted it to. She sighed and looked down at her hands. I had to. I wasn't allowed to raise you, because you were not the child of two gods. What do you mean? Wesley asked. We used to walk freely among the people, but eventually we had to remove ourselves. I was already here, in my realm, when Zeus gave the orders, but others were still on Earth, still walking among the humans. When we retreated from Earth, Zeus also decreed that any child not born of two gods would not be allowed in our realms either. So, who is my dad? Celine took in a deep breath. When I decided I was ready to have you, I knew your father could not be a god. You had to be raised on Earth, so you would be put in the path of my people, and if your father had been a god, you would have been stuck in this realm as the rest of us are. I was almost not even allowed to have you, but I was granted permission because I had promised my warriors you would one day be born. So, I came to Earth in my human form, and I selected your father from a list of men with specific characteristics and genetics that would combine well with mine and produce a strong, smart, and beautiful daughter. What does that mean? I asked, my brow furrowing. She used a sperm donor, Wesley answered. Celine laughed, the sound like bells as it skittered and echoed across the marble floor of the temple. Yes, she nodded. I used sperm donated to a sperm bank to conceive you. I had no romantic connection or relationship with your father. But why not raise me yourself? Why not stay in your human form until I was old enough to meet my mate? I was not permitted that luxury. I told you, I was almost not even allowed to have you at all. I was only given permission to conceive you and birth you. Zeus did not even give me the time to stay with you until I could find you a caring, loving home. In his eyes, you were just a human. Let the humans figure out what to do with her. Once born, she is no longer your concern, she told us, her eyes darkening and her voice thick and heavy. Couldn't you have given her to a pack though? Wesley asked. If you knew she would be the mate of a Leakin, why not have her raised with us? You know the story of my first daughter, young Alpha. You know what those who are jealous are capable of. I did it to protect her as best I could, to keep her safe from those who thought they had a right to her. They found me anyway, though. I pointed out. Lennox and his father. Somehow they knew who I was, and they were able to get to me and almost kept me from ever meeting my mate. Why didn't you stop them? Wesley asked her. Who are they? Where are they? Those are not the questions you came to ask me, and therefore, I cannot answer them, she told us ruefully. Wesley scowled and growled low in my ear in frustration. She took in a deep breath. All I can say is, there are those with darkness in their hearts, and sadly, I have no control over the choices others make. And I cannot intervene in mortal affairs, aside from pairing my warriors with their mates. I could foresee none of your life, aside from the mate I would pair you with and how your paths would cross. You knew we'd be pen pals? I scoffed. That's pretty specific. She laughed again, shaking her head. No, my daughter, I did not see it like that. I just knew that my human daughter would cross paths with the young Leakin when they were children, and she would help him from becoming too arrogant and too self-absorbed. She gave Wesley a pointed look, and he cleared his throat, his hand rubbing my upper arm. "Why me though?" he asked. "Why did you choose me as her mate specifically? Why not, say, the heir to the throne? Since they are actually descended from Conan." I turned to glance up at him, my brow raised. "I mean, I am grateful it was me. I love her. I love her more than I ever thought I could love another person, and I wouldn't change that for anything. I am honestly just curious," he rushed out, his cheeks heating slightly. He buried his face in my neck, hiding his embarrassment from his goddess, and breathing in deeply. I reached up and stroked his hair as his lips pressed a kiss to my neck. "Because I knew you would earn her love and her trust. I knew you would prove yourself worthy of her. And the heir's fate lies with another mate. Another of my children who needs a nudge in the proper direction. But that is not your concern or your story," she told him. "I am sorry," he muttered. "I didn't mean to pry." "No reason to apologize," she reassured him. "What about marking her?" he asked, lifting his head. "Does her being your daughter change how I do that?" "You will still need to mark her under the proper moon phase. Her birthday is on October 16th. It was a new moon when she was born, same as her sister." "So I am just a human?" I asked. "Yes," she replied. "Demigod status is no longer granted to those born from mixed parentage. We cannot gift you with any powers or with our lifespan. But the blood of a goddess runs in your veins. You may not have our gifts or our immortality, but you are still more than just a human. It is why you always seem so mature for your age, so much wiser than what you should have been. It is why you possess the grace and natural ability to excel in ballet. It is why you could feel the magic on our island. Because even without any powers, you are still connected to me by blood, and they created the island for myself and my daughter." "Daughters," she corrected. Wesley was tense again behind me, his mind whirling as he thought about what she'd said. Wait, the new moon is tonight. Right now. Last night, actually, Celine told him, grimacing in apology. "It is morning on Earth now." "Goddess, damn it!" Wesley cursed, unwrapping his arms from me and pacing the temple floor. "Oh shit, sorry," he exclaimed, slapping his hand over his mouth when he realized his mistake. Celine just laughed. "Please, you wolves use my title that way so often I don't even notice it anymore," she said, waving him off. Wesley forced a smile and walked back over to me, taking my hand in his. As he did, our skin shimmered and rippled, and I felt my soul being called back to Earth. "Your time here is almost over," Celine said, her eyes turning sad as she looked at our hands. "I hope my answers were enough for you." "We got the information we needed," I told her bluntly. "Thank you." I turned away from her and walked the reverse of the path I took when I entered, Wesley at my side. But her cool hand grabbing mine stopped me, forced me to turn and look at her. "Please, Haven," she begged, her voice hoarse and her eyes glistening, her pain and sorrow right at the surface. "Please understand. Giving you up was the most difficult thing I've ever done. Watching you struggle and being unable to do anything about it broke me in more ways than I can describe. It was the worst type of torture, being unable to intervene when things took a turn for the worse for you. But you chose to have me. You knew you'd have to give me up. You chose that. I didn't. You were selfish and wanted your daughter. I made a promise to my people. I told them you would arrive, that one of them would be given to you as your mate. I couldn't go back on my word. And do you truly wish I hadn't had you? Do you truly wish that you'd never met your mate, met Wesley and his friends and family?" My jaw clenched, and my throat tightened. I tried to swallow past the growing lump there, but I couldn't. Because she was right. Everything that had happened, everything I'd been through in my life before I met him and everything we had been through to find each other again, had led us right to this moment. Had led us to be together, to find love and peace and strength with each other. Had led me to my true family. "I understand." I breathed, my voice as tight as hers. "I understand why you did what you did. But I can't bring myself to think of you as more than the woman who gave birth to me. Not yet," I told her. "Maybe someday, but not yet," I repeated. She nodded as Wesley and I faded into hundreds of millions of specks of stardust, our souls flashing back through time and space and the other realms of existence to our earthly bodies.
Wesley's POV.
As my eyes opened back in the temple on earth, I felt the shaking body of my mate next to me and smelled the salt of her tears as they fell from her eyes. She curled into me, her face burrowing into my chest and her arms clinging to my neck and shoulders. Her conflicted emotions flooded to me through the mate bond, and I wrapped myself around her more, pulling her naked body as close to mine as I could, protecting her from the rising sun and the cool early morning air. My hand reached for a fur blanket and pulled it over us to hide our nakedness, even though I could sense we were alone in the temple. My hand rubbed the back of her head in long, soothing strokes, down through the ends of her curls. I could feel every bittersweet emotion from her, embedding into me like shards of a broken mirror, reminding me that this was a pain I could not fix. This was a pain she would carry our whole lives together. The pain of knowing her mother loved her and watched her for her whole life, but still gave her up, still left her alone for so many years, for her whole life. And the pain of knowing it was just as hard for her mom to watch her grow up, but never be there for her as it was for Haven to grow up without a family, feeling alone and abandoned and unwanted. "It's okay, Sugar Plum," I whispered, my lips against her forehead. "Let it all out," I told her. She clutched at me, her body trying to get closer to me, even though she was already as close as she could be. It was as if she was trying to get under my skin, to fuse herself to me. "She loved me," she whimpered, her voice muffled by my chest. "She did," I affirmed. "All that time. All those years when I thought nobody was there, thought that nobody cared, she was watching me, and I never knew." I nodded at her words, my hands moving to her back and rubbing circles into her soft warm skin, letting the mate bond do its job to comfort and protect. "Does it make me a bad person that even though I understand why, I'm still angry at her for just leaving me on my own?" she asked, peering up at me with bloodshot eyes. "I think it makes you human," I reassured her. "I think it's perfectly normal to be conflicted, to empathize and understand, but still be hurt." She blew out a shaky, relieved breath and pressed her face back into my chest, inhaling my scent. "But you won't ever need to feel alone again, Haven. I promise you. I am all in. I am yours until the end, whenever that may be. And I will mark you during the next new moon. Everyone will know that you're mine, and that you always will be. Everyone will know how much I love you." She nodded, her face scrunching up and her lip quivering as a fresh wave of tears hit her. "Don't hold it in, Haven," I whispered. "It's just me. You don't have to hide it from me." Her keening sobs echoed off the marble floors and pillars and up into the sky. I kept a firm hold on her, creating our own safe cocoon on the floor of the temple, our own space where she could mourn the life she never had. Water filled my eyes as well as I took some of her burden from her through the mate bond, so she didn't have to bear or face it alone. Never alone. Never again. I let her cry. I let her expel everything that had built up within her over her 21 years of life. She needed the catharsis. I knew she loathed crying in front of others, but I wasn't just anyone. I was her Wesley, her pal, her mate. As her cries quieted and her tears slowed, another sound filled my ears and jolted me to attention, putting my leakin on alert, the sounds of racing footsteps and shouting. I tucked the fur tighter around my Sugar Plum, pulling her to sit up with me as my eyes zipped over to the entrance of the temple, where I could see Nolan sprinting down the path, several oracles and acolytes following him, yelling at him. "This is sacred ground!" Cassandra exclaimed as he stopped in the entrance. She was the only one to keep up with his pace. "We have not given you permission to be in the temple. You could." "I'm sorry, but this is important and urgent," he said to her, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. "Wesley." "Haven," he said, his face apologetic as he looked at us and took in our swollen and puffy and tear-stained faces. I growled at him when his eyes stayed on Haven for longer than my leakin thought necessary, even though I knew it was from brotherly concern instead of any other reason. "What?" I snarled, pulling the blanket even higher around Haven's bare shoulders. "I just got a call from Sebastian," he said, his eyes snapping back to mine. "They found the Wainwrights." For the third time that week, I found myself in the cells, staring at someone through the one-way glass of the interrogation room. Two someones, this time. It had taken us less than 24 hours to arrange our travel and return home to California. Even though our trip wasn't for leisure, I had been hoping to spend one more night there. The sand and the bright blue waters of the Mediterranean Sea called to me. I wanted to take Haven down to the beach, to relax on the shore with her in my arms and watch the sunset, and dip our toes into the water so I could show her that not all oceans were as cold as the Pacific. But a romantic getaway such as that would have to wait. Tell me again how you found them. I frowned, turning to look at Serena and her friend, Riven, I think it was, where they stood with Sebastian, Levi, and Reed. Haven was at my side, holding my hand, and Nolan stood at her other side. She had been understandably quiet and withdrawn since we left the temple, although thankfully she hadn't wanted to leave my side. She'd been touching me in some way the entire journey home, using the mate bond to soothe herself and me. I told you, we saw them trying to sneak across your borders. It was clear from how they talked and the way they moved that they weren't from your pack. It was obvious they were plotting something, she repeated, telling me word for word what she'd told me when I asked her the first time, and what Seb had told me on the phone when I'd called him back while we were still in Greece. I glowered at her, pushing my aura out. I couldn't command her since she wasn't part of my pack, but I could make her and her friend feel uncomfortable under my aura, and maybe that would be enough to get her to admit if she was lying. She was a smaller she-wolf, and in the week or so since we'd found her and her group of nomads, I had yet to see her even shift. It seems oddly convenient that you just happened across them, I snarled. Everyone in the room flinched under my aura, except Haven and Seb Haven, because she was my mate, and my aura and alpha command would never work on her, and Seb, because we were technically of equal rank since I hadn't taken over the pack yet. Serena lowered her head but kept eye contact with me. She was a fearless thing. I'd give her that. I'm telling the truth, she gritted out. I gave her a low growl as I turned to look back at the Wainwrights, at the unassuming blonde woman and brunette man who had made my mate's life less than perfect, who I suspected had kept us apart after they adopted her. I would find that out for sure. Why they didn't send her letter. Why they lied to her and told her I didn't care about her, told her I wasn't really her friend. Why they felt the need to manipulate a scared, emotionally scarred 9-year-old girl like that. Wes, lighten up. I told you I trust her. Sebastian mind-linked me. That's something someone who has been getting some from a certain sexy, busty roguish she-wolf would say, Reed pointed out. I'm not getting some. I just trust her. I believe her, Seb sighed, clenching his fists. Just because you do doesn't mean I have to, I replied. It's too convenient. Too obvious. Wes has a point, Nolan said, agreeing with me. Your dad couldn't find them. Even the council was looking into them further after they spoke with Haven. And some little rogue and her band of merry misfits just happened to see them trying to cross your borders? They just let themselves be caught by her ragtag group and walked nicely onto the pack grounds? I mean, yeah, that is sort of what happened, Sebastian mumbled. Look, I know it all seems too easy and too convenient and like it could be a setup, like Serena and her friends may be working with them or for them or whatever, but I've always trusted my intuition, and my intuition has never failed me. Wesley. Haven. My dad's deep, commanding voice pulled me out of my mind-linked conversation with my brother and my friends. We all turned to look at him as he descended the stairs, his steps hurried and his face displaying urgency. I'm sorry, he sighed. I know you want to question the Wainwrights, want to get to the bottom of this, but the king is here, and he wants to speak with you now. Right now? I asked in exasperation. Yes, right now. He looked around the room, and his eyes landed on Serena and her friend. You too, he added, pointing at her. She shrugged, and I sighed, but followed my dad out of the cells, hand in hand with my mate, everyone following along behind us. Are you all right? I asked Haven quietly as we walked to the pack house. Mostly, she replied, squeezing my hand. What will we tell the king? She asked, looking up at me with her gorgeous blue eyes. I swallowed and glanced back towards the others behind us, checking how close Serena and Riven were. I still think what I said before, that we shouldn't tell anyone beyond those who need to know. It's the easiest way for me to keep you safe. She nodded. I agree, but can't the king alpha command it out of you? Didn't you say his command was the most powerful and could override the command of a pack alpha? I clenched my jaw, a nerve twinging at how tightly I held it closed. Let's just hope he doesn't, I gritted out, dropping her hand and wrapping my arm around her shoulder, pulling her into my side as we walked. We all filed into my dad's office, where King Malachi Goodrich stood near the window with Frederick. He was a tall and imposing Leakin, dressed in a business suit, but I knew from our few visits to the palace as a child that underneath those clothes was an intimidatingly powerful male, with bulky muscles covered in tattoos. Alpha King Malachi, I greeted him, nodding my head in a low bow as he turned to look at us. You wish to see us? Wesley, he said, giving me a curt nod. The last time I saw you, you had just had your first shift, he reminisced, looking me over. And you must be Haven, his future Luna, he said, turning to my mate. She nodded. Yes, sir. The ballerina in Peter's company, he asked. You know Peter? She queried. Everyone knows Peter, he laughed. More like Peter knows everyone, Frederick corrected. That's what happens when you're an ancient, very wealthy vampire. You make connections. Anyway, congratulations, King Malachi told her with a smile. To both of you, he added, looking back at me. Thank you, Your Majesty, I replied. Enough small talk, he said, turning serious, the twinkle in his eyes disappearing in under a second. I understand you have Haven's adopted parents in your custody, and that they are unregistered wolves, or perhaps wolves using fake names, he said. And there are some concerns regarding the nomads near your borders, the nomads who brought them into your territory? That is correct, yes, my dad said. Most of us feel it is too convenient that they just happened to find our future Lunas adopted parents on our borders, when we and you could not find them, try as we might, he added, emphasizing the word most. Sebastian fidgeted, but didn't shy away from my dad's sharp glare. I see, King Malachi said, his serious eyes turning to Serena. Step forward, please, young lady, he commanded, his powerful aura leaking out, making everyone in the room show their heads in submission. Everyone except Haven. I hadn't even thought about that. That maybe she wouldn't be affected by an aura because she was Celine's daughter and technically ranked above us. All of us, even the king. I squeezed her hand and glanced around at everyone after she met my eyes, emphasizing my submission to the king to her. Her eyes widened, and she lowered her head too, and thankfully, the king didn't notice. What is your name? He asked Serena. Serena Cisneros, she replied. And what pack are you from? None. We are nomads. We travel around and do jobs here and there, helping those who need it. And how did you come to have a transport stone? He asked. My councilman here tells me you have one. They are very rare, since the witches don't like to share their secrets with other species, so how do you have one? I got it from my parents, she shrugged. They helped out a witch, and in return, she gave them the transport stone and taught them how to calibrate it. And where are your parents? They are in another state, doing their own work, currently. We will meet up again at some point, when both of us are finished with our work. And are you working for or with the Wainwrights or Lennox's family? He asked her, pushing out the full extent of his aura and alpha command. No, Serena said, shaking her head. I'd never collaborate or work with people like that. They are the worst type of people, looking out only for themselves. The king nodded and smiled, then turned to my dad and me. Well, I believe that settles that concern, he said. I frowned, but nodded. There was no denying the truth in the answers Serena gave. Not when she was under an alpha command like that. We had to believe her. Thank you, King Malachi, I said. I'm sorry we didn't believe you, Serena, I added, looking at her. I told you she proved herself trustworthy, Sebastian gloated. Yeah, I'm sure she did, Reed muttered, his eyes flicking to her butt. A growl spilled into the room, Serena's eyes flashing in warning as she sneered at Reed, her lip curling. Not your type, she snarled, enunciating each word harshly. You don't know unless you try, Reed winked. Not interested, she said. I gave an exasperated sigh, shaking my head at my best friend. He really needed to learn how to read a room. The king held back a laugh, amusement shining in his eyes as he observed Serena and Reed's interaction. "Would you like my help with questioning the Wainwrights?" he asked, looking at me. "I could override any potential commands on them, since it seems Lennox's dad is an alpha and may have ordered them to keep certain details secret." I nodded. "All right," he said. "Lead the way."
Wesley's POV.
Before we went back inside the cells, I pulled Haven off to the side to speak with her. "I want to make sure you're going to be okay with this. I know you handled us questioning Lennox just fine, but this is different. They were your parents. I know you weren't close, and your relationship wasn't great, but they're nothing to me," she said brusquely. "They're not my family. I know that now. I know who my family really is." "And who is your real family?" "Jack and Shirley. Reed. Nolan. Sibby. Maya and Imogen and Maddie." I raised my eyebrows at her expectantly. "And you, I guess," she added with a shrug. Her lips twitched as she held in her laugh, and I pulled her body into mine by her hips, gripping them tightly as I lowered my face to hover just inches above her lips. Her breath hitched in her throat, and she whispered, "You're more than my family. You're my mate." Her breath was warm and tickled my lips, and I smiled at the happiness that filled my heart at her words. "Damn right I am," I told her. I placed my lips on hers, giving her a sweet kiss. "I love you," I whispered as I pulled away. "I love you too, Wes." "The king might command them to tell the truth about everything they know," I told her, reaching to cup her cheek. "They might tell him who they think you are, if they're aware. We might not be able to keep it a secret from him." She sighed and nodded. "I thought about that too. I guess we'll just have to trust that if he finds out, he'll keep the secret with us." I nodded. It was exactly what I'd been thinking, but I wanted to make sure she felt the same. It wasn't that the king wasn't a trustworthy male. It was just better to keep her secret between a smaller group of people. "Okay then," I murmured. "Let's go get some more answers." We walked the rest of the distance to the entrance of the cells, where Reed stood waiting for us. "Are you coming in?" I asked, even though I already knew his answer. "No. Torture isn't my thing. I'll hold down the fort while you're all in there," he told me with a serious look. "I know you will, Beta," I said with a nod. He stood up straighter and taller at that, his shoulders rolling back proudly. "Thank you, Alpha. Luna," he added with a nod at Haven. She gave him a weak smile, but didn't complain or object to him using her title. I was glad to see she was getting used to the idea, and letting my friends address her the way they should. Letting them show her the respect and honor she deserved. The king, Nolan, Sebastian, and my dad all waited for us in the cells. Anticipation hung heavy in the room, all of us eager for what was to come. Impatient for answers, and anxious about what they may reveal to the king. I will only step in if necessary, and only to use my alpha command on them. I'll let you do most of the questioning and any torture that's needed. I can't get blood on my suit, or Queen Tatiana will kill me, King Malachi told us, nodding at Haven and me as we entered. "That's fine." Sebastian shrugged. "That just means more fun for me." King Malachi shook his head and gave a slight chuckle. "Not too much fun, I hope. I'd like to get home to my mate and my family." "How are the twins?" "I meant to ask you," my dad said to the king. "They're fine. Getting smarter than me every day," he said with a small inward smile. He shook his head, tearing himself away from his thoughts. "After you," he said, gesturing at the door. We all filed in, myself, Haven, Sebastian, and the king. Nolan and my dad stayed out in the other room. I expected some sort of reaction from the Wainwrights upon seeing Haven or the king, but they gave us nothing. Their faces were blank. Dead. Emotionless. Like there was nothing left inside them, nothing they had to live for. Not even a hint of remorse at seeing Haven, or a glimmer of hope that maybe she'd let us go easy on them, or a flash of fear when the king walked in. Just nothing. Haven stood in front of me, that same iciness back in her eyes that had been there when we'd questioned Lennox. When she'd shown us just how strong she truly was, just how perfect of a Luna she would be. She had truly removed them from her life as people who mattered to her. I linked my hands with hers from behind her, letting her decide how much more of me she needed, how much of my touch she wanted. As strong as she was, I would only strengthen her, just as she would strengthen me. Just as she already had strengthened me. Nobody said a word. The only sounds were our varied breaths and the faint beatings of our hearts as we all waited. I gave Seb a look and a nod, telling him I was fine with him taking the lead on this one. For now. He walked to the tray of tools and began circling it, picking things up and putting them back. Each time he angled the tools so the light glinted off them and they were in Melissa and Matthew's direct line of sight. You didn't need to bring the king, Melissa scoffed, finally breaking the silence. We're not under any alpha commands. And you don't need to torture us. We'll tell you whatever you want to know. We have no reason to lie. We'll see, Sebastian sneered, tossing a knife and catching it by the handle. I'll keep this nearby. Just in case, he told her with a wink. What are your real names? He asked, stepping up in front of her chair with his arms crossed and the knife visible. Melissa and Matthew Blaine, Melissa told him. And what pack are you originally from? Faithful Wolves in Wyoming, near Yellowstone. But we renounced the pack over 20 years ago. Seb glanced over his shoulder at the king. I know the pack, he confirmed. I'll mind link Frederick to check their membership records. Seb nodded at him, then looked back at Melissa and continue. D, why did you adopt Haven? Lennox's father made us. He wanted us to raise her so Lennox could mate with her. A growl escaped me at that. From me and from my leaking in my head. The thought of someone else claiming what we now knew had always been ours was not something we wanted to think about. Haven squeezed my hands and rubbed her thumbs on the inside of my wrists, right over my pulses. Her warmth and the tingles reminded me she was still mine, and no one was going to take her from me. How was the adoption closed so quickly? I asked him. I don't know, Melissa shrugged. I would guess bribes, or maybe magic, or both. But I honestly don't know how he managed it. I refrained from glaring at my dad through the glass, even though I wanted to. If we had just done the same, used our connections and our money, then maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe Haven would have grown up here, been my friend our whole lives. Been safe and happy. Did you really send my letters to Wes? Haven asked her. No, Melissa admitted bluntly. What did you do with them? Haven asked. I put them through the shredder. Haven's eyes narrowed, and it was my turn to soothe her. I stepped in closer, so my chest brushed against her back every time I breathed. She inhaled and closed her eyes, then exhaled. Why didn't you send them? Lennox's dad made us sign a blood contract. What's a blood contract? Haven asked with a wrinkled nose. It's a magical contract created by a witch and signed in blood. It's what Imogen signed when she learned about what we are. It's what you would have had to sign if you weren't my fated mate, I told her. And they're supposed to be monitored by the 13 crones. Of course, just like with any group of people, there are good witches, and those with ill intent, the king sighed, rubbing his temples and shaking his head. What did this contract bind you to do? We were to raise her and keep her away from any wolves and lichens or other packs except Lennox while she was growing up. Why did he want her to be with Lennox so badly? I asked. He wanted them to be mates. I growled again at that. Her face remained blank and her voice flat the entire time we questioned her so far, but it almost felt like she kept repeating that to goad me or rile me up. But why? I asked through clenched teeth. He told Lennox he would be strong enough to be the alpha of his pack if he could mate with Haven and mark her. He told us that already. But why? Why Haven specifically? I prodded, trying to see what she would say, how much they knew. I don't know. He never told us why. Just that Lennox and her had to be together. The king glanced at me with a raised brow. I looked down at Haven. I wanted it to be her decision whether he commanded them to tell the truth. It was her secret, after all. She met my eyes, sighed, and nodded, and I looked back at the king. You will answer the question truthfully, he ordered. His aura and power filled the room again, forcing all of us into submission. Haven reacted quickly this time, lowering her head as well to not draw suspicion. I told you, Melissa choked out under the weight of his command. I don't know. He never told us, no matter how much I asked him. Interesting, I thought to myself. Then again, it would make sense. Just as we were trying to keep it between a small circle of people, it made sense that Lennox's dad would keep that information away from the Wainwrights, or the Blaines, I suppose. King Malachi pulled his aura back and then gestured for us to continue. "How did you know Lennox's dad?" Sebastian asked, walking around her chair in slow, methodical steps. "He visited our pack several times when I was 20. He was friends with the Beta, and we had an understanding of sorts. We would share a bed whenever he visited, and I would expect even realize he was an Alpha until she pursed her lips together and blew out a breath through her nose. Until you what?" Sebastian snarled, stepping closer and twirling the knife as a subtle reminder of what she would face if she didn't just keep talking. "Until I became pregnant with his son. With Lennox." I blinked, and I could practically feel the surprise ripple through the room at her confession. "Wait, Lennox was your son?" Haven asked, her eyes wide, her hands trembling in mine. "Yes. His father came to my pack one last time to break things off with me because he'd found his mate and she was pregnant, too. I had already met Matthew, and we had marked each other, and I had no desire to continue anything with him. But he still accused me of trying to trap him by getting pregnant with his child, of trying to have his heir first. I begged him, told him I would do anything to prove to him that wasn't true. He made us, Matthew and I, sign a blood contract that we would tell no one that Lennox was his. And that we would leave the pack and live somewhere that wasn't near any packs, and we would do anything he asked of us." "And you just agreed to this?" I asked, looking at Matthew incredulously. He shrugged. "I was young. I was in love. The mate bond and our marks were still fresh. I didn't know she was pregnant when she turned 21 and we made it. I just wanted to be with my mate and make her happy and prove to her that I loved her no matter what. So I agreed." "You could have rejected her. Could have had the council come and perform the ritual to separate mates who are already marked," I told him with a scowl. "You have your mate. You know what the bond is like. Could you have done what you suggest?" I glared at him but didn't reply. I couldn't give him an answer to that question. Not with Haven's sweet jasmine scent filling my lungs every time I breathed in. Not with knowing how truly powerful and overwhelming the mate bond could be. Even though I suspected ours was stronger than most, because of our past and everything we'd been through together and who she was, if he'd felt for Melissa even a fraction of what I did for Haven, then I could understand how that wouldn't have really been an option for him. And he was also a weaker wolf, which would have made the rejection more painful for him and harder to withstand. Melissa glanced at him with a look of regret and pain. "Continue," I ordered her. "Continue your story." She took in another deep breath. "After a few years, he came back and told us he had a job for us. He said it may be a bit of time before he needed us to begin this job, but we had to be ready. He said if we were successful, he would name Lennox as his heir instead of his true firstborn. You see, even though we conceived Lennox first, his mate bore him twins, and since twin pregnancies are shorter, she gave birth first. But he was disappointed in both the children she gave him, feeling that neither would make a proper alpha. He took Lennox from me, and said he would make sure he was raised properly, raised to be a suitable alpha should we succeed in our task. Then, when Lennox was 11, he returned, and helped us adopt Haven. Gave us the new blood contract. And then I had to watch my son grow up in someone else's home. Watch them raise him while I raised the girl who he would mate with, all the while hoping he would succeed and become alpha for all our sakes, for everything I had sacrificed. Why didn't you keep Haven from coming here, though, if you weren't allowed to let her near other lichens and wolves or packs? I asked. It made little sense. Why go through all that trouble to keep her away from me, to then let her just move here, anyway? Not that I was complaining, I just didn't understand the logic. The blood contract said while she grew up, and she was fully grown by that point. I guess he didn't think that part of the contract through very well. We tried to convince her not to leave, but she left anyway. And since the blood contract said we weren't allowed to physically harm her, we had to just let her go. Why did you disappear? Where did you go? Sebastian asked, gripping the back of Melissa's chair in his hands, the tip of the knife grazing her bare upper arm. She flinched away from the knife, her teeth clenched from the touch of silver against her skin. We didn't want to. We went to sleep one night, and when we woke up, we were no longer in our own home. Lennox's father had drugged or spelled us and had us moved. He locked us in cells, and we had no clue where we were.
Wait!
Haven said, interrupting us. Her brow furrowed, and I felt her confusion and racing thoughts through the bond. She tilted her head to the side. I'm confused. You said Lennox's dad's mate had twins, but Mary and John didn't have any other children. Lennox was the only kid in their family. What happened to these twins? Where were they all these years? Haven rushed out, the words almost running together with how fast she spoke them, showing how quickly her mind was working. Melissa blinked at her and laughed, the first show of authentic emotion she'd had since we started questioning her aside from the one look she'd given her mate. She shook her head, and then looked her straight in the eye. I never said John was Lennox's father.